So we know what's going on in the Persian Gulf, right? We know that there's a war going on, and there's been energy production that's been shuttered in. It takes years to bring that back online, not to mention the infrastructure that's been destroyed, like the loading facilities or the pipelines that have been destroyed in this conflict in the Persian Gulf. So that means that we'll have higher oil prices for the foreseeable future. So that changes the calculus worldwide about what countries will have what kind of leverage, given the fact that, there's other oil producing countries other than the Gulf states. So what are these countries? Well, the United States, we're a major oil producing country. Now, we don't really export very much because we end up consuming most of our oil domestically, but we do export a little bit. And we actually do export quite a bit of refined product. So it gives the United States a little bit of leverage. Canada is also a oil producing country. You have the Albertan tar sands. Again, a lot of that is consumed. A lot of that actually gets consumed in the American market, so it doesn't really have a huge impact on the world. You got countries like Malaysia and Indonesia that do produce some oil. It exports a little bit of oil. And it's actually very important because that part of the world imports a lot of its oil traditionally from the Persian Gulf. So Malaysia would be very important, right? It's very strategic because it's in Southeast Asia. It's an oil exporting country. And that's very important given its proximity to China, the Philippines, South Korea, Japan. So then we look at other oil producing countries. Let's look at the major exporting countries. You got Russia, with its infrastructure currently being destroyed by Ukrainian drones. But aside from that, if Russia can still export oil, Russia would be in a much more stronger position, right? Because they're now selling a very strategic, inelastic asset. Even despite its sanctions, countries will come to Russia to buy oil. India already does that. China already does that. And other countries will probably find ways, little sneaky, roundabout ways of doing it without upsetting the United States and Western Europe. You got Argentina, that is an oil exporting country. Now, again, most of the oil is consumed locally, but that gives Argentina a bit more leverage. It gives Venezuela some leverage potentially. Now, the United States effectively has a blockade and is seizing Venezuelan oil. Venezuela is a basket case of a country. It sits on a very large oil reserve, but it's not able to capitalize on that because they just destroyed their infrastructure thanks to Chavez and Maduro. But we also have Angola, we have Gabon, and we have Nigeria. These are three African countries that are major oil exporters, and they would have some leverage. Now, that oil can go to Europe, right? Nigeria and Angola are basket case countries. I mean, there's a lot of corruption. Angola has been in a perpetual civil war for decades. You got the ethnic cleansing and all that stuff, and regional conflicts that don't really make the news, but you can go read about them. But nonetheless, it's an oil exporting country, and it could have some newfound leverage, right? Now, it's not necessarily good because they'll probably buy more weapons and do more ethnic cleansing. Or in the case of Nigeria, it's very corrupt, and who knows where that money is going to go, right? It's going to enrich a handful of people in Nigeria. But as countries, that gives them more leverage because now oil, like I said, an inelastic strategic asset that the world absolutely needs. And frankly, the world will overlook those messes to get what they need. So traditionally, the cleanest place was the Persian Gulf. Much of the world's oil came from the Persian Gulf or had been produced domestically. Now we're looking at countries like Russia, Angola, Nigeria, the United States. Countries that aren't, I guess maybe you could say, so nice, having strategic leverage on the rest of the world. You look at countries like the Philippines or South Korea or Japan that don't have the ability, that are dependent on these imports, being in a more stressful position. So some food for thought, thinking about what direction everything is going. And this will continue, and that assumes that things get rebuilt right away in the Persian Gulf. This will continue for at least a couple of years, at least a year, maybe, 2-3 years. If the Persian Gulf War reignites, all bets are off and things get a lot worse. So, some food for thought.